So one of the things that's really important when you embark on this healing journey is the awareness of shame. Shame is such a powerful emotion, and most people who are the product of narcissists or who have been in relational trauma hold shame wounds. I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm no good. We tend to take responsibility for what other people do to us when they don't take responsibility for their action. That's how shame develops. So one of the main things we do when we're healing trauma is healing those shame wounds. Most relational trauma is rooted in shame.
And narcissists carry the most shame.
Yes.
All people.
I love you for saying that, because that's not what gets presented, but that's certainly what's underneath it all. That's what's driving the motivation for people who are narcissistic, is their shame wounds for sure.
Welcome to another episode of Negotiate Your Best Life. I'm really so excited to bring you Dr. Frank Anderson, because this episode is going to help heal you, heal your life, heal yourself. So often I have said that your trauma does your talking, does your picking, runs your life. And if that is what's happening, you don't even realize it. And here is somebody who's going to help stop that for you so that your true self can start doing the talking and running your life. Dr. Frank Anderson he's a Harvard trained. He's really been from the whole clinical side of things. And then he decided to really do a pivot and a shift in the last several years of his life and really focus on internal family systems and help people heal and transcend trauma. And he's going to be talking about that and his last several books. And I really cannot wait to have him talk. You're going to want to listen to this episode probably more than once, probably a few times, because of how much he's going to be bringing to you. So thank you for joining me and for bringing your light to the world.
Oh, beautiful, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me. I already feel a synergy and an alignment between us. So I love that. And I really do have a calling and a purpose. It really is a purpose to bring trauma healing to the world. And I am going to do that in any and all the ways that I can. So I'm grateful to be here and to be able to share some of my wisdom, both clinically and also personally with the world. And you're right, I am moving out of that ivory tower Harvard world into the general public, because I feel like this message has to get out there. And I want to be one of the people that brings the message of healing to the average person who doesn't maybe have access in the same way.
I feel that too. I feel like I'm just the conduit.
Yes,
And
right? Yeah.
yeah, and it kind of happened for me that way as well. I started talking on YouTube during COVID about negotiation in general, and then I did one video on how to negotiate with a narcissist, and that's the one that went viral. And I was like, I don't want to be the narcissist queen.
I love that. I love that. I don't want to be the narcissist queen. Well, hey, you know what? Let me dive into that right away, because I feel like, how there's like words of the year? Like
Yeah.
ghosting was a word of the year a couple years ago. Like narcissism is like the now thing, right?
Yeah.
There's so many people talking about narcissism, and there's obvious reasons in culture and society why that has become such a big deal. There's in Hollywood, there's this whole takedown from the Me Too movement and of all these narcissistic, powerful men, right? There's so much going on in that realm, which I think is super important. Like there's a bunch of people who are the recipients of narcissists, and they need to be empowered to be able to speak up and get out of something that's abusive and harmful. The thing that I want to tweak, I'm going to say this because I don't like the pathologizing and the bad guy nature that some people give to this group. Narcissists are evil. They can never heal. Let's throw them away, right? There is that othering that happens, polarizing these worlds. And the thing that I hold as a trauma survivor, who's been working in this field since 1992, like a long time, is that there's a way that we as culture and society will label toxic men with a trauma history as a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
And we label obnoxious, abusive, and I'm putting that in quotes, highly emotional women who have trauma histories as borderline. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, if you're a woman with a trauma history, you get labeled a crazy borderline personality disorder. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're a man with a trauma history, you get labeled as a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
So even though these terms are important, I don't want us to stay in the polarity. It's like, hey, we might have more in common than we think, like is the root of childhood trauma, even though we have different adaptations and reactions to it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on who you are. So that's the position that I hold. I'm not saying, and I really feel strongly about that. I don't want to other anyone. We're too polarized.
Boy,
This
I
is my view.
100% agree with that. I mean, instead of a me and against you world, it's a me and
Yes,
you world. It's the
yes,
and, right?
yes,
And you talk about
100%.
that in your
Yes,
book too,
yes.
right? Because I read your whole book.
Mm,
But I I also think that what happened with me
yeah,
was I think this whole thing took off because I had dealt with a narcissistic business
yeah,
partner. I have a definite
yeah,
narcissist in my family as well.
yeah,
And I started also researching narcissism because I had a big family law practice. I was representing high net worth individuals, and everybody started saying that their partner was a narcissist.
yes,
And
yes,
so I needed to beat them in the courtroom and start figuring out what was going on here. But so I kind of took it from a different approach
yeah,
as well. But I think that it also became a calling for me because I started to get floods and floods and floods of
yes,
emails where people were
yes,
like, "You saved my life.
yes.
I didn't commit suicide because of you. You saved my children's lives. I now got custody." And I
Yes.
thought, okay, this is a God thing. This is
Yeah.
now,
Right.
I have to do this.
Beautiful. You know
Yeah.
what I want to say about it? And you're absolutely right, because there's such a segment of the population. One of the complexities about this kind of way I describe men and women with trauma histories, like whether you're a narcissist or you're a borderline, whatever those, terms are. The problem is, and I was certainly the recipient of a narcissist. My father was very much narcissistic. And
Mm,
the problem in it is that men tend to have the power in culture and society, and the recipients of narcissists tend to be people who aren't empowered and don't have the space to be
right.
strong enough to stand up, right?
Exactly.
That's the thing that I really remembered for myself is, I had 7 years of no contact with my parents when I became an adult, right? And
Right.
I tried to speak up like, hey, this happened to me. Hey, this is real. And both my mom and dad, for very different reasons, my mom needed to stay connected to my father at all costs, and my dad needed to maintain power and control, could not hear or have space for me and my view and my perspective. And I wasn't strong enough to withstand it. So that's the thing that's so challenging for people who are the recipient of narcissists is you have to have a certain amount of strength to stand up and show up. And it's harder when you're the one down in a power differential relationship, right? That's
Right.
the struggle. And until you get strong enough to be able to speak up or stand up, and people like you, and there's others out there that are helping to empower the disempowered to
Hmm.
get of things and to be strong enough to stand up to that power differential.
Fed up with narcissists walking all over you? Sick of everyone believing their lies while you're paying through the nose in attorney's fees? What if you could hold all the cards for a change? Hey, I'm Rebecca Zung. I'm a top 1% trial attorney, a USA Today bestselling author, and I've spent my entire career helping people slay narcissists in negotiations, most recently through my proven slay method. What if your suffering could become your superpower? Imagine turning all that pain into power, not just for you, but for others too. This is your chance to take back control. You can finally win. Become a high conflict negotiation certified coach. Help others while transforming your own life and do good for the world. This is your chance. Go to RebeccaZung.com/apply and I'll show you how to turn the tables for good starting today. Right. I think that, certainly as a child, you don't have a choice.
No.
I mean, as a child, that's one thing. But as an adult, the flip side of they're bad, and all of that is, you keep yourself in this victim mentality.
Yes.
And so what I teach people through my SLAY method is, because SLAY is an acronym. So it's strategy, leverage, anticipate, and you. The why is you have the power and your mindset. And the flip side of that is taking responsibility for where you can say, I have a choice.
Yes.
And where did I say, I have a choice in this? I can take responsibility here.
Huge. It's such a big deal. Like, this is one of the things that was a surprise to me in my, so it's so delicate. The line that you're talking about is so delicate around, I have a choice, what's my responsibility versus blaming the victim, right? That's such a fine line because we want to be very careful. And I don't hear you saying that at all.
No.
But what did I contribute? What is my role? What is my choice? Which is independent of what the other person does or says. Like, it's such an important thing to kind of tease out and differentiate, because we have a role in certain ways doesn't mean we deserve here that was given to us at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. But
no, and it doesn't mean that that other person wasn't a bad person, because 100% they need to take, that other person was probably a bad person.
Yeah.
Right. And you probably need to have really strong boundaries. And we can talk about that too, and there's a pathology to narcissists.
Yes.
That you got to understand about their trauma.
Yes, that's exactly right. Their trauma too. Now, when you're the recipient of it, it's not your responsibility to understand the origins of their trauma, right? I want to hold that clear for people. What I've learned is that if you do your own work and do your own healing, you're able to differentiate better and more clearly what's mine and what's theirs, right? What's mine and what's theirs. If you do it prematurely, you run the risk of taking responsibility for their behavior. So I say to people, heal first. Release what you're carrying based on what happened to you. Then you have the capacity to see them more accurately and honestly for who they are. This is what happened with my dad. Is like, after the more healing I did, the more I was able to see his humanity, his vulnerability, and his limited capacity, really. And it was no longer about me, because it was about him separate from me, because kids take responsibility for the ways perpetrators act, especially when perpetrators don't take responsibility for their action. So it's a very tricky dynamic here. And I love your take responsibility for what's yours and for your choice, because it really does help you discern and differentiate what is theirs versus what is mine. I know I am not responsible for what happened to me. That is my dad's responsibility. I am responsible for speaking up and showing up in a way that's challenging for me, to be honest and authentic, and show up in conflict, because that was really scary. Like, that's my responsibility. The more we release our trauma, the more we're clearer about what's mine versus what is theirs. Because typically, there's this people in power, extroverts attract introverts. Narcissists attract passive people. You know what I mean? Like, there is this yin and yang, this power differential. So you have to look at what's yours and what isn't yours. And the people who are the recipient of the abuse have to create the space and the boundary to sort theirs out first in order to be able to see the others more clearly.
So how would you define, they talk about big T and little t trauma?
Yes.
Some people have never heard this concept before.
Well,
can you define that for people?
Well, let me tell you this, it drives me a little crazy. Okay, so I'll define it and then I'll tell you why it drives me crazy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's this, in the field, big T, is it big T trauma, little T trauma? Like, because I understand the reasoning. Like, is this like, were you raped and violated? Were you in war? Big T?
Yeah, for sure.
Or were you like bullied or shamed or, neglected, little T? Like, small traumas versus big traumas. Okay. Now, I understand some of the reasoning behind it is like giving people a perspective, like, where does my trauma land in the general categories? However, here's the problem of it, Rebecca, for me, is somebody outside is defining whether your trauma is significant or insignificant for you, more or less significant, because we know this in families. Like, look at my family, for example. Like, I was affected by the abuse within my family very differently than my brother Ross was, who was 20 years younger than me, or 20 months younger, right? And so he didn't have the same kind of abuse, but he also had a different temperament and a different reaction to it. So I was much more sensitive, and the trauma that I experienced had a profound effect on my life. Now, somebody else could have a similar experience and it might not affect them in the same way. So if we're going to use the big T, little t, let the person who experienced it tell us how significant it is for them. I don't want an outsider to say, no big deal. That's just a little T. You were bullied on the playground.
The
no
person
way.
Decides.
Yes.
Of course, because bullying could be definitely a big T.
Huge. And even neglect. Like, I worked with a client several years ago, and she had huge shame reactions to kind of everything. And she was like, but nothing happened to me. I didn't have a big trauma. Like, I didn't have a big T. What's my problem? Like, she didn't understand it. And the more that I worked with her, there was these series of micro traumas that accumulated for her that had a huge impact on her life. Right. So I would rather us not compare suffering and compare traumas. I would rather pay attention to the impact it has on you, because most people downplay the significance for survival's sake, right? Yes. So I'm not a big T, little t, because trauma's trauma, and it affects us the way.
Being a latchkey kid in the 70s, we were all that. Right? All of us were.
Exactly. Yes, that's right. Totally. So who's going to say the impact that had on you? Or your mom's depressed in bed and you're not getting fed and you're not getting clothing, you're on your own, right? I was one of these kids. My parents were kind of wild partiers when I was a kid. And it was the ultra responsible firstborn. Like, I really raised my siblings, and I had this burden of responsibility in a way that was really had a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
I knew caretaking as my value.
Mm-hmm.
It's partly why I became a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
can't define it for other people.
Right. Yeah. So, but I think that's good. I mean, at least we have sort of a baseline there.
Yes.
And so I think that helps. Have you ever met somebody, they started off to be the most charming, charismatic person you've ever met in your life. Then they turned out to be your worst nightmare. And then when you go to negotiate with them, they're a living hell. Well, I developed something called the SLAY method of negotiating with narcissists, and it has helped tens of thousands of people in more than 150 countries win, go from feeling drained and defeated to getting the outcomes they want. And the reason why it works is because I spent more than 20 years studying narcissism as a trial attorney, and now I'm here to help you win too, and also take your suffering and turn it into your superpower. Take your pain and turn it into profit, peace, and purpose as a highly specialized high conflict negotiation coach. If you want to learn how to do it, then just go to RebeccaZung.com/apply and I will show you how. Let's talk about the body keeping score. Because as we get older, I think we kind of start going, you know what? I don't want to think about it. Let's just get really busy. Let's just let my life move on. I don't want to think about anything that happened to me during childhood.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yes, that's what most people do. Most people, we're programmed to suppress and push away pain and move forward to get away from it. Okay, that's the natural rhythm. That's what we organically do. We don't, like, I think about the cavemen. They didn't move toward the fire. The fire was hot. They moved away from the fire, and we're kind of programmed that way. The problem with that is the more we suppress and push away, more we unconsciously try to fix it in our present day life. So we seek out people who are similar to our abusive histories in an attempt to fix our past, but it's largely unconscious. Like, Rebecca, I hate to tell people this, but attraction is the redemption of our childhood wounding. We are drawn.
So good.
They're drawn. Like, everybody's like, oh my God, I wish I knew, right? I wish I knew, because
that is the trauma doing the picking.
Yes, the trauma doing the talking. I love that phrase that you said. It is, but it's with a good intention. It's like, oh, I've got to fix this. Let me pick this guy or this girl. They're a better version, right? And we make this unconscious agreement with our partners, which is what draws us to each other. Is like, hey, you fix mine, I'll fix yours. That's the beginning stages of any relationship. It's like, oh my God, this person's amazing. It's like, they're going to fix mine and I'm going to fix theirs. So we are drawn to people with similar wounds, but with different adaptations.
Okay, so you want to hear my whole thing as a divorce attorney?
Yeah.
This was my whole thing, because before the narcissist was the craze.
Yeah.
It used to be that the husband would always say the wife is crazy, and the wife would always say the husband is controlling.
Yes.
But here's the funny thing. At the beginning of the relationship, the wife would always say, oh my God, I love him. He takes care of everything. He's exactly so controlling. I love that he takes care of everything.
That's exactly
and the husband would always say, oh my God, I love her. She's so crazy. I love that she's so crazy.
Free spirited, like exciting.
Thing that they love at the beginning, they hate at the end.
So there was this play in Boston years ago, and I didn't see the play, but the title was brilliant. I love you. You're perfect. Now change.
Yes.
right? That right. I
Exactly.
love you. Like we're drawn to these people, and we have all of these wild expectations that they're going to be the solver of all of our problems. And then the very thing we're drawn to, we tend to hate and resent and push away, right?
Yeah.
And the
But it
sign of
was
the
so funny because the thing that they
yes,
would say at the beginning was the exact thing that
yes.
they would say at the end that they hated.
And what ends up happening in healthier relationships, right, is that we are drawn to these people because part of us seek relationships to heal. Like that's okay. But if we keep relying on the other person for our solution, we tend to resent them because they're never going to be the mother or the father we never had. They're not supposed to be. We turn them into something different. Like we're supposed to attract people as equals,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when we're asking them to heal our childhood wound, we put us into the one down position and them into the one up position. And it screws up the relationship. Like it changes what it's supposed to be. So
Mm-hmm.
people should like be drawn to somebody and then take responsibility for your own piece of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I can tell you with my husband, like I did a version of this, but I had done enough healing that it wasn't a total replay, right? Like I'm an outgoing extrovert. He's a quiet, calm, spiritual introvert, right? And we both have very similar traumas in our childhood, but we both had done enough work that we weren't expecting the other person to fix us or heal us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I can tell you over the years is that I have become much more contained. I can be alone. I've incorporated his quiet, calm presence.
Mm-hmm.
I've made it my own. And then he, in turn, has been more social and more outgoing. So we can learn from the other person and take responsibility for growing instead of relying on them and then getting pissed at them for not fixing it. Right.
Mm. It's the expectations that kill
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. 100%. If we don't take responsibility and we leave the expectation on somebody else fixing our problem, it's like we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to share our life together, not have somebody else fix it for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about internal family systems because I think this whole idea of parts and
Yeah.
how these parts of us were sort of born is really, really fascinating because, I have like the controller.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
controller is so strong in me because I had an alcoholic mother.
Yeah.
So, I kind of really related with your
Yeah.
situation, and um, so very, very strong in me. I have a saboteur who kind of
Yeah.
comes in sometimes, but I've very much learned to deal with all of these things because I've done a lot of work.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about these different parts of us, and how you've really come to do this work of
Yes.
internal family system.
So internal family systems is this model of therapy, and Dick Schwartz is the founder of it, and I kind of teach all the trauma training within the institute. So that's been my specialty forever. I work with Bessel van der Kolk starting in 1992. So when you said the body keeps the score earlier, I'm like, I was just with Bessel last week in Oxford, England. So these are my two big mentors, Bessel van der Kolk, who's been like a pioneer in trauma treatment, and Dick Schwartz, who's the founder of IFS. IFS says we all have different parts or aspects of our personality, and
Mm-hmm.
they serve different roles
Mm-hmm.
depending on what we've been through in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like IFS believes parts are normal,
Mm-hmm.
but they're forced to take on extreme roles based on what we've been through. So if we're bullied, if we're sexually abused, if we're neglected,
Mm-hmm.
some parts take on the extreme role of protection. The
Mm-hmm.
saboteur, their controller, like those are protectors.
Yes.
They serve a function of protection. Most people hate them.
Mm-hmm.
We want to love them because
Mm-hmm.
we love them for the reason they're trying to help,
Mm-hmm.
not for the effect of their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Love them for the ways they try to help. Drinking, suicide, controlling, over exercising, all have a positive intention.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's other parts. So those are parts that protect us
Mm-hmm.
in these extreme, quote, bad behaviors. And then we have parts that carry wound and pain and trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the parts that tend to be young and vulnerable, but not only, we can get traumatized when we're older, right? Who carry the pain of the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
alone, unlovable,
Mm-hmm.
not worth it, not good enough, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a process in IFS where we connect with our protectors from a loving, kind place, which we believe everybody has, a
Mm-hmm.
loving, kind place. So we connect with our protectors, get to know them and appreciate them, and then they allow us to be with the vulnerability, the pain, and the trauma. And there is a way of healing that. There's a way of healing trauma that I really want people to understand because it's so important. You don't have to live with it, you can release it.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't know that.
Making that transition between summer and fall is always a crazy thing. And that's why I love having a leather jacket, like my gorgeous one from Quince. And they have timeless and high quality items, which I love. And they don't blow my budget, which I also love. They have cashmere sweaters and washable silk tops. And everything is like 50 to 80% less than other brands, which I also love. They cut out the middleman. They pass the savings on to us, which is also amazing. It's safe and ethical, which I also love. I really love my brown leather jacket from them. It's super stylish and it's high quality. Just love that. So make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high quality closet essentials. Go to quince.com/negotiate for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/negotiate to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/negotiate. Yeah. Well, I mean, because you can thank your protectors and say, hey,
Yeah.
you actually did a good job. You really
Yes.
served, because they did serve
They
for a
did.
long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if it looks on the surface like they're causing harm, we know that their intention is pure and they're trying their best to do
Mm-hmm.
the job. Most of our protectors learn how to protect from the environment from which we live in. So if
Mm-hmm.
we grew up in a dysfunctional family, we're going to figure out dysfunctional ways to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
You know what
I
I
mean,
mean?
I mean, because for a long time they served
Yes.
well,
Yes.
you
Yes. And
know,
to
and so
appreciate them.
you kind of like learn to go, okay, you did your job, but you can rest.
Now I'm here. I'm an
Yeah.
adult. I like to say, are you open to retiring?
Yeah.
This is
You
what
can
I say
go
to
to
the
the
part.
beach now and
Yeah, could you retire? Could you trust me
yeah.
could you trust me to be at the helm, right? Usually they won't fully do that until the wound they're protecting is healed. So
Right.
they're doing this job for a reason
Right.
and they're trying to protect the pain and the trauma. So once we heal the pain and trauma, they really don't have to do the job anymore. They are freed up.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really fascinating once you start to just show up in your authentic self and start to realize that your true self, the adult self
Yeah.
is good, and you can show that.
Yeah.
So you have a 4-part um process to trauma healing.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that?
Yes, definitely. So it's like, first, I would say thank your trauma response. Like, that's the thing we're just talking about. These responses and reactions within us that most of us hate, drinking, swearing, over exercising, overeating, yelling at our kids, like, thank your trauma responses. It's the trauma doing the talking, as you said. So
Yeah.
thank them and appreciate them because they know we hate them and we're trying to get rid of them. But when these parts start feeling appreciated, it's a whole different connection and relationship inside,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a huge shift. And then trust that you have the wisdom and capacity to heal your own trauma. I'm really trying to get away from this listen to the expert stuff. Trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Trust you have the wisdom inside of you to heal, because the wisdom inside is what gets negated in trauma. Okay. We learn to disconnect from ourselves for survival's sake. So I
Mm-hmm.
want people to reconnect to their wisdom, to their intuition. So many people, you may hear this a lot, Rebecca, like people who are getting divorced, like, I was walking down the aisle in my wedding dress and I knew this was a mistake, but I did it anyways, right? Over and over and over again. It's like,
Yeah.
I did not listen to my wisdom. I disconnected from my truth, right? To be loved or to be liked or whatever it is. So I want people to reconnect to their own wisdom, because that was missing in
Right.
trauma. Then there is a transformation. The third T is like transformation. There is truly a healing process in transformation. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the part that holds the trauma needs to share the experience, because it's the one that holds everything. So it needs to share the thoughts, the feelings, the physical sensations, not just the story, right? And once this part inside shares what it's holding, it's like, oh, I'm not the only holder of this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I've shared it now. So I don't have the burden of holding this experience all alone anymore.
Mm.
Then the second step after the sharing is complete is a corrective experience. We want to give the part that had the traumatic experience, a corrective experience. Like, I want it to feel loved or seen or valued, because whatever the trauma is, I want it to have the opposite of. So it gets what it never got. It has that, oh my God, I am valuable. Oh my God, she does love me. Oh my God, I am worth it. And once they've shared the experience and have had a corrective experience, then they could release the trauma. That's where release is truly possible. All the thoughts, feelings, memories, physical sensation can really be released in a more permanent way, which is very important. And not a lot of people go through that transformation sequence. They
Mm-hmm.
miss they miss it. So it's one of the biggest things that I want to share with the world is like, this is something you can do, and I'm going to teach you how to do it. I already know my fourth book is teaching the general public how to heal. I really am. And then that last stage is really take back your power. And you have your version. It's like take back your power
Mm-hmm.
and choose to forgive if you want to. Like, forgiveness is a whole thing, but taking back your power is like, I have me now. My
Mm-hmm.
trauma is not doing the talking, and I need to navigate in the world differently. People think, oh, heal your trauma, and then you skip off into the sunset and everything is fine. And that is not true. It's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to show up differently. It's a challenge. It's got you kind of go against those old assumptions or those old ways. So taking back your power is deliberate and takes conscious awareness, and it's frightening sometimes, you know. And then we can choose, like I said, to forgive somebody. Forgiveness should happen after healing, not before, because so many people push it prematurely. Like, no, no, no.
It's so beautiful. It's much harder to do than it. I mean, because you're really
Yeah.
kind of rebuilding new neuronal pathways in
Yes, you
different
are. That's
ways,
right.
right?
And
So,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, and so 90% of what we're doing is subconscious, right? The way we act, the way we feel, the way we think, and
yeah,
so it's so hard. And so when I tell people, people say, well, what's the first step? What's the first step? And so what I always say is, look at a narcissist as if they're a 2-year-old having a tantrum on the floor, because
yeah,
they have experienced arrested development because of
yeah,
the, what happened to them as children, and I talk about their trauma. And so I always say, kind of put an invisible shield down around you and
Yes.
just,
The boundary.
step one, don't run, and just look at them as if they're an observer, and start speaking to them as, this approach isn't working for me, and we can have a conversation when you have, calmed down, and I can see that you're upset. Just sort of like,
Yes.
observe, don't absorb, and
Yes.
respond, don't react, kind of a thing. So how would you advise somebody, like, what is the first step for them, like, that they could do if they feel triggered, if they feel like, because emotions are in the body, they're it's a sweat, it's a my
Yeah.
hands are now starting to sweat,
Yeah.
my armpits are sweating, my it's more of a somatic response a lot of times, right?
Yes. Most
So,
often it is. Yeah.
right. What if you could just take a shot and lose all the weight you wanted to? I know for me, a few years ago, I was dealing with thyroid issues, menopause issues, autoimmune issues, all the things, and I gained a bunch of weight and I lost it all, but it took forever. And I wish that something like Body had been around back then to help me lose the weight. But now you get the benefit of it because Body is now around to help you lose weight. It's just one shot a week. And combined with a healthy lifestyle, you can lose 15 to 20% of your weight in a year on average and actually keep it off. They've helped more than 200,000 people so far, and they help you even with support, with getting the medication through your insurance and everything that you need so that you can actually lose the weight. That means that it's such a great opportunity for you now. So average weight loss is 15 to 20% in a year with a healthy lifestyle change, and BMI and other eligibility criteria apply. Go to ro.co/Rebecca. Sign up today and you'll pay just $99 a month for your first month and $145 a month after that. And medication costs are separate. That's ro.co/Rebecca. So what would you say to somebody when they're feeling triggered, they're in a conversation with somebody that's their trauma is coming up for them? What would you say is the best thing for them to do?
So a couple things. One is, and people don't like to hear this, Rebecca, but when it's intense, it's yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you're having a strong reaction, it's about you and your history, because
Mm-hmm.
it's too easy to say it's about what the other person does.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing really is awareness. And I say that word, and then it's so challenging when you are in the midst of something. So whether you're in fight or flight and you're freaking out, or you're in numb and detached and disconnected,
Mm-hmm.
that awareness is very difficult. Okay. So, when you're screaming, oh, freak out, I'm going to die, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to have awareness because those activated parts take us over. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So awareness is key. And it's like going to the gym and it's like building a muscle. It's like the more awareness, the quick. And what ends up happening is I'm aware 10 minutes after, I'm aware 5 minutes after, I'm aware during, I'm aware before. It moves like this. So the awareness has to keep growing. And the
Mm-hmm.
more awareness you have, the sooner it will show up for you, which is
Mm-hmm.
super important because when you have that awareness, there has to be a pause. Like the pause is second. You have to pause, you have to stop, and you have to get curious inside.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on for me? What's happening right now? Right. And that's where I like people to kind of get out of blame and look at origin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is this related to? Have I felt this before? What is this rage about? What is this fear about? Where did it come from? So get out of, when we get out of blame and we start looking at root cause and origin, there's a differentiation. Your brain comes back online. You're like, oh, I understand this. When somebody yells at me, it really activates the fear I had when my dad was angry. Wow, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
That awareness allows us to differentiate and understand the origin of the trigger. Now, eventually, you want to heal, the abuse by your father or whatever. But if you're going to repair with the person,
Mm-hmm.
I always say recover fully and have compassion for them before you engage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really challenging for people because, look, you did this to me, and like you're never going to repair anything. You're never going to take responsibility for your piece, or you're never going to speak up and name the ways they hurt you if you're not open-hearted, right? If you're still in your trigger to some degree. So
Yeah.
there's a process involved in this that I think is super important that
Mm-hmm.
people can do, and it's a practice. It's a practice. It doesn't come quickly, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And when you start having some good outcomes, both people involved tend to like it, and they both will do it. You know,
Right. Because then your true selves are talking and not the trauma selves.
you got it. That's right.
Yeah. Because in any relationship, I always say there's four people involved.
At least,
Selves and the trauma selves.
depending on how many traumas you have, it could be a really crowded auditorium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
So one of the things that's really important when you embark on this healing journey is the awareness of shame. Shame is such a powerful emotion, and most people who are the product of narcissists or who have been in relational trauma hold shame wounds.
Mm,
I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm no good, because we tend to take responsibility for what other people do to us when they don't take responsibility for their action.
mm.
That's how shame develops. So, one of the main things we do when we're healing trauma, and I'll describe it in the four T's that I have, is healing those shame wounds. Most relational trauma is rooted in shame. And I
Oh,
want people to know it's such a powerful emotion, but it certainly can be healed.
mm. So good. And narcissists carry the most shame of
Yes,
all people.
I love you for saying that because that's not what gets presented, but that's certainly what's underneath it all. That's what's driving the motivation for people who are narcissistic
Mhm.
is their shame wounds for sure.
What do you think of trauma therapies like EMDR or brain
Yeah.
spotting, things like that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm doing, that I did this last year, is set up an organization called the Trauma Institute, right?
Hmm.
The reason I set that up was because I wanted to bring together all the different trauma treatments.
Hmm.
Trauma is a specialized form of treatment. If you go to grad school or you're a coach, whatever you are, you have to learn the different ways to heal trauma. It's not just intuitive or natural. You've got to get extra education around it. So I created the Trauma Institute to bring together all the different modalities, right? EMDR is a great modality for trauma healing.
Mm,
Two somatic treatments. One's called sensory experiencing.
mm,
Somatic experiencing, which is Peter Levine's model. Pat Ogden has sensory motor psychotherapy. That's another great model.
mm.
There's an attachment model called AEDP. IFS is a model. So
Yeah.
I want to bring together all the different trauma modalities because there are
Mm,
many of them. And interestingly enough, they all work, but they focus and highlight different things. Like
mm,
EMDR highlights memory processing.
mhm,
Somatic experiencing or sensory motor psychotherapy highlights somatic or body sensations.
mhm,
IFS highlights the different parts of us. But if it's an effective model, it works because they all work on the same neurobiological dysregulation. So
mm,
I believe in integration truly. I really want to integrate these different models so that therapists or coaches know which one to use when,
mm. Is
you
this
know?
this is not going to be a residential facility, it's like outpatient or
Not right now. Right now, it's an online program for
oh,
education
online? Okay.
purposes. but I am working on getting a treatment center. Yeah, I'm in the talks with people in LA actually to create a drop-in center to have people start having a place to go and do some of this work. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Well, I think you'll be very busy.
You think so? Yeah.
You'll have a lot of work.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh, interesting. So, what would be the last thing that you would say? Like what would be the best way that people could start to really learn to love themselves if they don't feel self-worth or self-healing? I mean, that's really what it's all about, right?
It's about self-awareness and self-connection. When we are traumatized, there's a disconnection between our authentic self and the parts that go through the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Part of this journey is love and connection, okay? Internally as well as relationally. So there is a journey of going inside, getting to learn about all the parts that are trying their best and truly appreciating and loving them for what they've done, and love the parts that hold the trauma and help them release the energy that doesn't belong to them. Trauma is energy that's not ours, that we absorb because of what happened to us. So I want people to release it so that they can be themselves without the trauma. I say the me before the trauma, right? And so I want everybody to know it's possible. I want everybody to know I'm going to teach people how to do it, whether it's in therapy or outside of therapy, because there's way too much trauma in this world. And we are all collectively called, you are too, in the way that you talk about it, and so am I, to help this world shift and heal, because we need it. We really, really need it. And because of my own personal story, I know it's possible.
It is possible, 100%.
Right.
I've helped many thousands of people in 150 countries around the world. So I've seen it too.
You got it.
I know it's 100% possible. So where can people learn about you? I know you have incredible books. So for sure. But what's the best way to connect with you right now?
Probably the best way to connect with me is through my website at frankandersonmd.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. I have one coming out today at the end of the day, this month's newsletter. And then I'm on most of the social media channels. Probably most active is Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. I'm on YouTube also now, doing YouTube shorts. Frank_Anderson MD is Instagram. And, we're building a community. Like, we're all building a community here together. And so, come join me in making this shift and change in the world, because nobody's going to do it alone, and we all have to do it collectively.
Absolutely. And we'll link all of that in both the podcast here and the YouTube, and also his books, To Be Loved, Transcending Trauma, Internal Family Systems. Great stuff. You are up to really amazing things in the world. Dr. Frank Anderson, absolutely love you, love your stuff, and what you are up to in the world. This is fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great. And I do appreciate all that you're doing in the world too. 100%.
Thank you. Narcissists have a confession to make, and that is that they are way more afraid of you than you are of them, especially in court cases, mediation cases, or any kind of cases where you have to negotiate with them. But you know what? I have a confession to make too. I'm sick and tired of these people bullying you and making you feel exhausted and paying way too much in attorney's fees and dragging you through the mud. My name is Rebecca Zung, and I'm an attorney. I've been recognized by U.S. News as one of the best lawyers in America. And in fact, I was so sick and tired of these people bullying you that I started studying narcissism so that I could beat them in the courtroom. And now I'm here to make the case so that you can win too. I developed a 4-part proven blueprint that has helped tens of thousands of people take back their freedom, win, and get back their power. And now I'm sharing it with you in a special live event, Outsmart the Narcissist, the 4-part proven plan to take back your power. 4 simple steps, 1 free live event, 1 free hour of your life. That's what stands between you being in hell and you being free. Join me, click the link for Outsmart the Narcissist, the 4-step proven plan to take back your power. Just click the link and let's go.